Good. All right, welcome to OLC Term 1B. This is Class 1. We are looking through the study guide and doing an introduction to the course, and I am Jillian Percy. So here is what your study guide would look like. And as you can see down the side, it kind of has all the information about how to connect to the course. The one thing is the previous Zoom was not correct. This is the correct Zoom. And the time has changed, so we're from 2 o'clock to 2:50 every Monday to Thursday. All right, so this course is designed to help you acquire and demonstrate the cross-curricular literacy skills that are evaluated by the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test. If the course is successfully completed, it will meet the provincial literacy requirement for graduation and also be counted as a full credit in English. Throughout the lessons, you will develop the skills necessary to improve your English grammar and writing ability. It doesn't say this here, but this is that bottleneck course that either you need to have completed the literacy test or you have to have this in order to graduate. One or the other has to have happened. The course materials, check and make sure that you have units 1 to 4. You also should have the study guide, and you should have received the novel called Jimmy Comes Home. If you have not received any of those things, please let us know as soon as possible so we can get them up there, okay? Let me see here. Unit assignments. Altogether, all the unit assignments, and I believe there's 43, will add up to 70% of your mark. The culminating activity in Unit 4 is a literacy portfolio, which is just where you kind of gather up some of your assignments and reflect on them. And then the final exam takes 20% of your mark, and altogether that's, of course, 100% of your mark. So at the end of the week, try and make sure that you've sent in any work that you've completed. Please do not wait until you have an entire lesson or an entire unit. It's a lot to mark 20 assignments at once. It's much better to just send me your assignments as you finish them, okay? Also, that way I can give you comments and make suggestions for ways to improve, and that'll like improve the results in your next assignments. It's very important that I have either a contact number or an email that you check regularly where I can reach you or leave messages. If possible, either give me a phone call or send me a quick email that I can follow back when I want to send things to you. This is especially important if you are doing this course and you're in a community that doesn't have a learning center, okay? Because normally I would send things to the person that runs the learning center, but if you don't have one, then I need to be able to send material to you, okay? Course delivery. This has changed a little bit. We added one more course into Term 1B because we thought people should have access to this course because it's such a crucial course. You are encouraged to call in and participate in the broadcasts. If you can't be in the learning center, just try and listen at home or at work. And if it's at a bad time for you when you're already at work, it's fine. We record them and put them up on the Facebook site, not Facebook, sorry, the YouTube site, and you can just listen to them later on at home if you want to. You are also encouraged and welcome to call me for help. I'm usually in the studio from 2 to about 3 o'clock, Monday to Thursday. Rest of the time, I should normally be in the office from 11 to about 6, and I take a lunch break from 3 to 4. Let me see here. Tentative class schedule. For the first 3 weeks, we're going to be working on Unit 1. Unit 1, for some reason, is the biggest unit. It's got about 18 assignments, and I always worry that people are going to look at that and get a little bit overwhelmed, but the rest of the units are much shorter, okay? Week 4 and week 5, we'll work through Units 2, and week 6 and 7, we'll work through Unit 3, and then the last couple of weeks, we'll work through Unit 4 and help you get ready for the exam, okay? This is tentative. It changes as we go along, but that's a rough outline. 5 things you can do to stay organized. First, read through the study guide to make sure you understand what the course is all about. Second, contact me as soon as you start the course to introduce yourself and to say that you've received your course materials. try to plan to attend class or view the class recordings on YouTube regularly. I do explain a lot of things in the course that aren't explained in the package. So you will get a lot of information that isn't there. Use any websites that are listed in the lessons. And remember that you can set your own goals for when you finish each assignment. This is especially important if you are one of our students who is an independent learning student. If you are an independent learning student, you have until June to finish this course. Now, you don't want to wait until May to start doing the assignments. You want to do a little bit each time, but you may have a slightly different schedule, and I'll kind of talk about that in a couple of slides. Generally, if you are part of the Radio Zoom course and you're logged into term 1B, and I don't know if I have anybody who's that that kind of a student this term, but if so, then all the Unit 1 stuff should be submitted by week 4. All the Unit 2 assignments should be submitted by week 6. All the Unit 3 assignments should be finished by week 8. And then, of course, Unit 4 assignments should be finished by the end of week 9. And so would the culminating activity in the final exam. If you are an independent learning student, do not worry about that. It doesn't affect you at all, okay? Yep. So term is done by June 13th. I'm gonna put a possible schedule if you want to follow it. It's just a kind of an idea to help you lay things out in case that's tricky for you. I didn't schedule anything for the month of June so that you've got time to catch up. So here's a possible schedule. And again, you don't have to follow this. You are the captain of your own course. You get to decide how you want to do this. You know when you've got free time and when you don't have free time. But roughly, this was my idea. In November, we've got kind of 2-3 weeks left. First couple weeks, I would work through lesson 1, which has 5 assignments. And week 3, I would start lesson 2. Same thing going into December, work on lesson 2. Then week 2 and 3 in December, start working through lesson 3. Then when we switch to January, start working through lesson 4. And for this one, you'd like week 2 of January, lesson 5, week 3 of January, lesson 6. And you would just keep on following this schedule. February, first 2 weeks, lesson 7. Week 3 and 4, lesson 8, and then lesson 9. Come March, you'd be doing like 1 lesson each week, lesson 10, lesson 11, lesson 12, lesson 13. Come April, same thing, lesson 14, 15, 16, 17. And then in May, we would have lesson 18 and 19 in week 1 and 2. Then week 3, try and finish up any incomplete assignments. We need all the assignments done because you use them to do lesson 20, which is your literacy portfolio, and then you can take the exam. If you're in a place where you don't have a learning center and taking an exam is going to be a problem for you, contact me and we will work out alternate arrangements, okay? All right, contacting your teacher. This is outdated. This is from the previous term. The studio number is 1-800-465-7144. If you happen to live in Sioux Lookout, then you could just call 737-4017. The WASA office, 1-800-667-3703, and my extension is 2211. Office hours are the best time to reach me. I usually come in around 11 o'clock. I'm here till 3 o'clock, take a lunch break, and then I'm here till 6. If I'm not there and don't answer, you can just leave a message and I will do my best to return your call. However, it's always best to send me an email. That's probably the thing I check all the time throughout the day. And so that's the quickest response time you'll get for that. You can fax your work into 1-800-463-7852. Now, your work, you can email it to me, but it has to go through the student work system. So it's better to just send it through the student work right away. Student work at nnec.on.ca. Always make sure on every single assignment that you've put your name up top. You can put your community, put the course. I teach 4 different courses, so this isn't my only one. You can put my name. And you can CC it. So like if you've sent it to student work, you can also carbon copy it to me. Sometimes on Friday, if it's getting late, I might still be here working and the secretary's gone home, and then I can kind of mark things and just send it back to you on Monday. My email, jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. Facebook, capital G, capital P-E-R-C-Y space, capital W-A-H-S-A. You can add me as a friend and then you'll get the news feed. I basically am just posting what the course recordings are. So really checking YouTube's kind of probably more useful, but it's there. I know not everybody has a phone, so sometimes Facebook is your best way to communicate with me. And if so, let me know, okay? Same address for YouTube, capital G, capital P, E-R-C-Y space, capital W-A-H-S-A. I post the classes. I try and post them that day. Sometimes when it's really busy, it might be the next day, but generally I post them right away. Let me see here. Oh, okay. Really important note on sending assignments through the email. I know some people don't have a computer. You're just kind of doing your work on a phone. If that's the case and you need to take a picture of your work, try and make sure you send it as an attachment. Occasionally, it'll give you the option of send as an email or send as an attachment in the email. Please choose send it as an attachment. For some reason, when you just send it directly as an email, it's really hard for us to see it and print it off properly, and it takes us a lot longer than if you just send it as an attachment. So here's a little picture. See how it says send as attachment? That is the best way to do it. Okay, so if you have to do that, and there's a few things like assignment 3 and assignment 4, that's the way you're going to want to do it. Also, a lot of assignments you have to hand in the rough copy and the good copy. Make sure you write on the top of the assignment which one it is, okay? I want to be sure when I'm marking. A lot of times, especially the further along you get in the course, they get marked slightly differently. So I can't even really start to mark until I know for sure which one it is, okay? This helps the secretary. Everything that you send through the student work gets marked in a little binder so that we know and we've got a record that it got sent. So we want to make sure we make it easy for the secretary to be able to print things off, okay? Oh, you can also save the picture as a PDF on your phone and then start an email and attach it that way. So whatever you're more comfortable with, you still need to make sure to put the course number, which is OLC 40, the assignment number, rough copy or good copy, and your full name. Not every assignment has a rough copy or good copy, but a lot of the writing assignments do have that. And our very first assignment does have that. Okay, so when you enrolled, you were automatically assigned an email. You may not have gotten any kind of communication about that. So if you aren't sure what your WASA email is, then reach out to me and I will find out and I will send that to you. And the reason this is really useful is once you have that email, you also have access to all the apps that Google has, and those are free apps. Okay, those are already paid for by us. And two of the most important ones are Google Docs and Google Slides. And those are really useful assignments that you will need to do the assignments, especially Google Docs. I think Google Slides is important too, but Google Docs you absolutely will need. If you're looking for it, once you've signed into your account, you're going to see like a little waffle thing up here. See all those little dots? And when you click on that, it will open up all these apps. And if you see this little blue one here with lines on it, that's called Google Docs. And if you click on it, a word processing program will pop up. And this is the best way to do your good copy. It also has some nice helpful things like spell check and grammar check. So once you do that, this is what will come up. A blank document, and then there's a letter and a resume, and you can go into the template gallery, for other things. Mostly you want the blank, but later on in the course, we do tackle a letter and we do tackle a resume, so they're helpful to have there too. Don't use their brochure for a brochure assignment. That isn't a good one. And then once you've clicked on that, here's what your blank page will come up as. All right, I'm gonna go to my next note because I can kind of show you these icons. Some of you, I'm sure, are really familiar with that, with this program. And if so, that's great. But I also know I have students of all different ages. And so some people might not have used Google Docs. So I want to kind of quickly go through some of its elements so that you know how to use it. Okay, let me just see here. Okay. All right. I have no idea why I tried to do that. Sorry. I absolutely did not want it in the trash. Okay, so what are some things you can do in Google Docs? First of all, you can select your font size, your font color, and your font type. Up here, this is telling you font. The font is just what the type is looking like. And these are all the different looks of the fonts. Some of them are really kind of fancy, like this. This is something we might use for like a poster or something, or maybe later on for your brochure. You wouldn't use that as an everyday font because it's kind of hard to read. Everyday Arial is fine. Calibri is fine. Verdana is fine. Those are all really common ones. I can also select the color. I can take this and go over here to this A and pick a different color, like bright red. I could underline it if I wanted to. It's bold right now, I think. I could unbold it. I could italicize it. Italicize is when it leans over, okay? I can move my text around so that it meets this left margin. That's what it's doing right now. That's the most typical. But there's some assignments maybe you would want. Hang on. Oh, wait, let me just fix that. Here's my undo button. If you ever do something you don't like, oh, just hit that and you're fine. So let's say I wanted to move this to the middle. See how here it says align and indent? And I can pick here, it's left aligned, center aligned, right aligned, or justified. You probably don't want to use the justified, but here's a center alignment. And then here is a right alignment. She probably wouldn't use very often. And then here. Okay. And welcome, Lacey. Hi, how you doing? Can you hear me? All right. I hope there's no more buttons that I'm supposed to have sent because this is my first time having somebody in the course. All right. So I apologize, Lacey, if you're trying to communicate with me. It's like, I am new to this too, so I might not see things. You can also create all different types of bullet points. The bullet points over here, this gives you round bullets, arrow bullets, square bullets. You can also number your points like that. You can decrease an indent or increase an indent. You can change the margins or the orientation. So the margins, you see here, page setup. I can tell it to be portrait or landscape. I can make really big margins or very small margins. I can tell it a different paper size if I was working at home and was going to print something off. So these are all some of the things that I can do. Oh, and I just disappeared things. Hang on a second. There we go. I can also add headers or footers. The one nice thing about adding a header is your information, like your name and the course, you could always have that appearing on every single page, and that way you're not ever going to get your assignments lost or anything. You can put page numbers on. You could do columns like when we do our news article, or you can change the spacing. If you go up to format, paragraph styles, alignment, spacing, columns, headers and footers, all these kind of things. So this is just different things you can do in Google Docs. I really encourage you, go in there and play around with that if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, okay? All right. On-air protocol. So when you're on air, it's important to listen and participate with your teacher and any other students. Pay attention to the material being studied and participate during the broadcast rather than working on any earlier assignments. Don't surf the internet unless it's part of the on-air coursework. Work on any current assignments when given the time on air to do so. Use polite language. Inform the teacher if you need to leave the room during a broadcast. If you're asked a direct question, answer to the best of your ability. If you don't understand, you can always say, I'm sorry, but I don't know, or can you rephrase the question? Or I need a little more time to think of an answer. I'm not probably going to call people out that often, but it's just there. Plagiarism. Plagiarism is a really serious offense. Plagiarism occurs when a student borrows words or ideas from someone else without giving credit to that source. If you submit another person's work as your own, or if you copy and paste from the internet without telling me where you got it from, or if you copy your answer directly from the textbook, all of those are examples of plagiarizing. If you're not sure about what is or what is not plagiarism, check with your instructor. So let's say you're doing an assignment and it's talking about trying to define a word and you're not sure if you've put it in your own words well enough. Feel free to say, hey, here's what I've written. Here's what the dictionary said. What do you think about this? I have no problem answering those kind of questions. The clear and correct usage of the English language is an important part of all the WASA courses, and obviously even more so for the English course. We expect that you'll complete your assignments using correct sentences and well-written paragraphs unless the assignment says otherwise. Spoken language and written language are not quite the same. You, just like everybody else, we always all speak in incomplete sentences. And we use our voice and we use our facial expressions and our body language to fill in all the different gaps in the meaning so that a listener can understand your message, right? Like if my mom says, hey, when are you planning to be home? I would just say 9 o'clock. But in writing, I would say, I will be home at 9 o'clock. When you're writing, your reader can't see your voice can't hear your voice or see your face. So they need to be able to use words and punctuation marks in such a way that your reader can understand what you're thinking and that everything is really clear. Sometimes people in a group or community use words or expressions among themselves that are not shared by other groups. So I'm thinking here of slang, for example, like when my son first used the word salty, oh, that person's so salty. I couldn't figure out what on earth he was talking about because it's a slang term meaning angry, but I didn't know that. So it didn't make any sense to me. So be careful of those kinds of things where I might not be aware of it. I may not be the same age as you. I might be older. I might be younger. And so I might not always be up on whatever slang you're familiar with using. Sometimes there's expressions that we get used to using or used to writing in Facebook and stuff that aren't always considered appropriate in writing. So things like I seen or I be. We need to use standard English when we're writing for assignments here. They talk here about computers. Computers are very important in our culture, and a lot of users have invented short versions of common words and expressions. These terms may be useful for informal email messages and chatting online, but they're not considered appropriate for assignments, okay? You are encouraged to word process your written work. Now, in this particular course, which is not true for all courses, a lot of times it'll ask you to hand in your rough copy in handwritten, and they mean your actual handwriting, okay? So that's very common for rough copies. If it asks you to handwrite it, then please, you do hand it in handwritten. But if it doesn't specify, you're allowed to use the computer. That's fine. A lot of times it asks specifically for the good copy to be in computer word processing programs. But if you don't have a computer, that's fine. Also, just let me know. Sometimes we can work things out for you. Yep, computers help you revise and edit your work without having to rewrite the entire draft. And the spell grammar check features can alert you to mistakes. Please keep in mind that I have to be able to read your work. If you find that your handwriting is a bit tricky, you may need to print or type your answers. Fax assignments must be typed or written in ink. Pencil's too light, it won't show up in the fax machine, okay? Assignments completed in pencil can be submitted via WASA Express. That's if you have a learning center. Please remember to use language that is appropriate for a school and a workplace environment. Words or expressions that are vulgar, like this sucks, or obscene, like swear words, are really not acceptable to hand in, okay? If you're not sure, the best bet is just leave that out, try a different word that you think will be less contentious. This talks about all the different ways to attend class, radio Zoom. You can phone the studio and they'll patch you through. We are also actually on the radio 91.9, television, Bell Express View, channel 972. I will post the classes after we're finished this. They save it, they send it to me, and then I can post it to YouTube. It takes a little while for it to process. It takes a couple hours for it to post because YouTube just has so many things posting constantly. So you won't see it right away. If you're in a spot where you have really bad internet and you don't think you'll be able to either access the YouTube properly or be able to link in, let us know, because we can save all of the things on a USB and then mail you the USB. Okay. If you feel like you need extra help with spelling or grammar, this is a little link for some information on that. And here is help with writing a resume, which is one of our assignments later on. Oh, okay. This is just if you got the USB, here is how you would listen to assignments. It would also work on gaming stations like PlayStation, Xbox, or if you've got like a smart TV. Now here they've listed the PLAR. Obviously for us, it would say OLC, probably the class number, and then I've been trying to make sure it lists what assignment so you can find the exact class you need. Here is, this is the wrong link though, I apologize. This is the link for Zoom class, but I posted it at the very front, so you would go back to that. The class meeting is recorded, so be aware that anything that you say is going to be recorded, and that means it will get posted when I post things on YouTube. Also be aware if there was several students, sometimes students chat back and forth, and it might be private while you're doing that chat, but then when we record it later on, those comments will appear. So you want to make sure that you don't write anything inappropriate that you wouldn't want people to see later on. To leave a class, you would just hit the word end. You can mute yourself and mute your video so people can't hear or see you. That's fine. And then if you wanted to make a comment, you would just unmute yourself and then you would be able to be heard. Or obviously you can also unmute your video and I'd be able to see you. Although I'm not sure I have it in the correct format for that right now. I will have to play around with this a little bit later, sorry. Okay, this is a learning skills rubric. I'm not going to go over this too much. This will show up on your report card. Some of this is a Ontario standard and it's used across all of Ontario. I think it's more appropriate really for a classroom environment, but it's there. We will make comments on it. It's not going to affect your grades in any way though, okay? They look at things like responsibility, organization, independent work, collaboration, which is not really a part of our course, initiative, self-regulation. Most of these things are not that important to this course. The first three, but you know, you're not going to get through the course if you're not responsible and organized and able to work independently, right? Those are unfortunately just major qualifications for doing this course. Obviously, if you are struggling with any assignment, call me and I will do my best to walk you through an assignment, okay? Grammar. In the course pack, they kind of just stick a whole bunch of grammar at once in, I think, Unit 1, and then they don't discuss it again. I don't really care for that format. I think it's a very hard way to learn a second language. So I kind of distribute the grammar topics throughout the course. We do a little bit each day. Some parts might seem really easy to you, and other parts might seem quite hard. Part of this is that teaching grammar kind of fell out of favor the last 10, 15 years. So if you went to school recently, your teacher might not have taught a whole lot of grammar. You might not have received a lot of instruction on it. Whereas if you're a little bit older, you might have gotten a lot of instruction on grammar. So it really depends a little bit on where you went to school, what your teacher was like, how they felt about grammar. Some people feel like grammar is really boring, which, you know, it can be, but it also, I think, is really important to be able to make yourself understood, to be able to have good grammar. So we will be talking about it. What is grammar? Anyways, it's kind of a funny word. We often think of it as just like periods and punctuation, but it's a lot more than that. Grammar is really the structure or the system that each language has. And if we translate from one language to another just word for word, it often doesn't make any sense because each language has its own structure, right? We have different ways of structuring the sentence. We convey information through different words or different word orders or different endings that we add to words. And this type of information can indicate when an action happened or who performed the action or the length of time it occurred, and so many other things depending on the language. Grammar is usually the part that makes learning a different language kind of hard. It's often relatively easy if you've got a good memory to learn the vocabulary or the words of a new language. But grammar, how to put those words together and what word endings go with what, tends to be the more tricky part of any language. All right, so I don't want to go too deep into this, but I do want to discuss it a little bit. There's two main different types of language, and that is analytical and synthetic. And what makes them different is how they create their grammar, okay? Analytical languages rely on word order and context to express their thoughts. Synthetic languages tend to use endings that they attach to words to convey the same types of information. So my understanding, I think, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, is that Ojibwe, Oji-Cree, and Cree are considered synthetic languages. So the verbs are very important and different endings are added, and those endings convey meaning. Whereas analytical languages are isolating languages, and they use a strict word order to convey meaning. So English, Chinese, Vietnamese, those are all examples of analytical languages. And in those languages, each word represents one concept, and the relationship between the words is determined by their position in the sentence. So for example, in English, the sentence, "the cat chased the mouse," conveys that the cat was chasing the mouse, with the subject being the cat and the object is the mouse. And that's identified by their position. Cat comes first, so it's the subject. Chase comes next, so it's probably going to be our verb. Mouse comes after the verb, so it's the object. However, synthetic languages, which are sometimes called inflected languages, use inflectional endings to convey that same type of information. Latin, Greek, Sanskrit, and German are all examples of synthetic languages. So for example, in Latin, the sentence, filius patrem amat, the son loves the father, conveys the same meaning as the English sentence above, but the relationship is indicated through inflectional endings. And one important reason that is useful to know is because in synthetic languages, it often doesn't matter what order the word comes in the sentence, because the ending is telling you everything you need to know. And so that can make it tricky when you switch over to English, because in English, the word order has to be correct or the meaning isn't conveyed properly. So that's probably the most important difference in the two languages. So I'm going to talk about this a tiny little bit. Different languages have different preferences for word order. Some may have no preference at all. So the main sentence parts in most languages are the subject, the object, and the verb. English prefers them in that order, this order: subject, then verb, and then object. So for example, I love him. But other languages have different preferred orders. So it could be subject, object, verb, she, him, loves, or verb, object, subject, loves him, she, or even object, verb, subject, him, loves, she. Now in English, those last three sound a little bit funny. That is the idea of grammar, okay? That every language has its own way of saying things, not just the vocabulary, the words, but how they put those words together in a sentence. Some languages, such as synthetic ones, may use inflectional endings to show which word is the subject and which word is the object. And that may mean that the word order won't matter at all. Why are we even looking at this? Because in your language, maybe you're used to a slightly different order for these parts. And that may make English sound a little bit weird when you hear it or when you're writing it. Also, if you're very strong in your native language and you speak and think in it primarily, then you may find having to mentally translate the words and the order a little bit exhausting. That may be one of the things that make making writing tricky. And I'm just mentioning it because sometimes people get kind of frustrated that writing is tricky, but writing is one of the most difficult things, I think, in every single language, because it involves conveying your meaning and putting them in a certain order and using grammar and using punctuation. And there's just so many things to be aware of when you're writing, and trying to kind of balance them all at the same time is a tricky thing. Okay, so we're going to talk about basic sentence structure. In English, the basic sentence has two main parts: the subject and the predicate. And the subject tells you who or what is the main actor or the main topic in the sentence, and the predicate tells you what the subject is doing. And the subject always comes before the predicate in English, okay? A sentence could be as simple as two words, as long as it has those two parts. It also needs to express a complete thought. So some examples are: dogs run, he fell, birds fly, Susan tripped, monsters lurk. Now I put the subjects in yellow and I put the predicates in blue. Now here's one. If I said, John is that a complete sentence? Basically, no. And here's the reason. It does have a subject and it does have a predicate, but it's not a complete thought. I don't really know what they're telling me. John is what? Is John sleeping, falling, happy, sad? It doesn't really tell me. So you can have a two-word sentence, but it's got to express a complete thought. All right, so generally a subject is going to be a pronoun or a noun. Nouns are basically naming words. They name people, places, things, and concepts or ideas. That's the tricky category I find for most people. Let's look at some examples of nouns. So people could be things like mom, nurse, Dr. House, firefighter, Jackie, dentist. Places can be like a city or a town, or just a place that you would go to, like let's go to the store or Sioux Lookout, or we could visit the ocean or a restaurant. I'm going to go to the office or go to the baseball field. Things are just almost anything besides people, places, and concepts. The vast category of things of nouns are things: pen, chair, flower, rock, poles, wood, anything really. Concepts or ideas. This is the tricky one. Things like beauty, sadness, democracy, excellence, popularity, or respect. We also have common nouns versus proper nouns. Proper nouns are basically referring to a specific thing by name, and they are always capitalized at the beginning, okay? So both common nouns and proper nouns are legitimately part of a subject. So I could say somebody's a boy, like the boy is doing something, or I could say Jonathan Smith is doing something. I could say the city is cold, or I could say Winnipeg is cold. The river is narrow, or Detroit River is narrow. The car is brown, the Ford Focus is brown. Let's go to a restaurant. Let's go to Kelsey's restaurant. I go to school. I go to Sioux North High School. I'm reading a book, or I'm reading Jimmy Comes Home. So they're both nouns, but one is general and one is specific and is the specific name of something, which means we use a capital for it. How are we doing for time? We've got about 10 more minutes. Okay, so singular nouns usually have an article in front of them in English. It's not 100%, but it's mostly. It just means that there's one of something, okay? Singular nouns generally need an article. The articles are a, an, or the. Plural nouns might use the article the, but they will never use a or an because a plural noun is more than one of something, and and an means only one of something. So a subject could include an article and a noun. So a desk broke, or the trees fell. A and an are what's called indefinite articles, okay? We use a generally. We only use an if a word starts with a vowel. So a desk, a tree, a shirt, or an apple, an owl, an avalanche. The definite article is the, and we use it when we want a specific item. So instead of just wanting a pen, you want the pen with the gold handle. It can be used with singular or with plural nouns. So I bought the chair we looked at yesterday, or I could say, I bought the chairs we saw. It doesn't mean singular, so it's fine to use it with plural nouns. Adjectives can also be part of a complete subject, and we use adjectives to describe nouns or pronouns. Adjectives often come right before the noun they are describing. They can describe how something looks or smells, feels, or tastes. I could also describe how many or origin or a whole bunch of other things, which we will talk about a little bit later. A subject can include an article and an adjective or a noun. And these are called like a noun phrase. And I'm only saying this because I want to make sure you guys understand that it isn't always just the very first word or two that is the subject. It could be a whole string of words as long as they're all describing the same noun. So some examples of some noun phrases that include adjectives or articles is below. So these are not a whole sentence. This is just a noun phrase, and we're going to highlight the adjectives in pink. So I did the first one already, the crazy monkey. So the crazy is describing the monkey, and the whole thing is a noun phrase. A ripe red apple. These are acting as adjectives. Okay. Oh, that works too. Okay. As an article, but in some people's minds, it also is considered a type of adjective, and that's kind of how I'm referring to it here, just so you're aware. The old skyscraper. 8 rowers. Numbers count as a type of adjective, okay? And different coats. Okay. All right. Simple and complete subjects. The complete subject is highlighted in yellow. The simple subject is underlined. It's very common in English for the complete subject to be at the beginning of the sentence. So here are some examples. And again, the reason is because later on when we're talking about how to edit your work, it's hard to explain if we haven't practiced it already. So this is us kind of practicing, making sure that we're good at writing basic grammatical sentences before we try and get all fancy and communicate a bunch of complicated thoughts, because that's what we do later on. All right, so wolves howl is your whole sentence. Wolves is your subject, and in this case, it's both the simple subject and the complete subject. A pen fell, that's the whole sentence. A pen is your complete subject, and just pen by itself is what's called the simple subject, it's the noun. The desks broke, that's your whole sentence. The desks is the subject, and just desks all by itself is the simple subject. The old smelly building collapsed. That's your whole sentence. The old smelly building is your complete subject, and building all by itself is the noun and is called the simple subject. The sneaky red fox hid is your whole sentence. Sneaky red fox is the subject or complete subject, and fox by itself is the simple subject. The beautiful little girl skipped. That's your whole sentence. The beautiful little girl is your complete subject, and girl is your simple subject. The dangerous Mr. Stevenson escaped. That is your whole sentence. The dangerous Mr. Stevenson is your whole subject or complete subject, and Mr. Stevenson is your simple subject. So if we look at these sentences, can we figure out the complete and simple subject? That old copier broke down. Okay. So if we're looking at this, that and old is describing copier. So here is our complete subject. Yep. And this part, copier, is our noun and it is our simple subject. The terrifying ghost wailed. All right, so what's our subject here? Terrifying and the are describing the word ghost, which is our simple subject. Let's see, here we go, good. The hot, delicious pizza arrived. So the hot and delicious are describing the pizza, which is altogether, that is our subject, and pizza is our simple subject. So later on, when we're doing our editing, I'm going to ask you to make sure that your sentence has a subject, because sometimes people forget. So that's why we're practicing now, because later on when you're handing me an assignments, I'm going to say, can you check and make sure that your sentence has a subject? And this is what I'm asking you to do. Not that you have to underline it, all that, but that you physically kind of go, oh yeah, it's definitely got a subject. Because when you're writing quickly, sometimes you just forget and you drop that part off, and then the sentence doesn't quite make sense. All right, we've got about 3 minutes. Let me just see. Hang on. Okay. A lot of what I'm talking about right now is just grammar. If we don't finish it all today, we will pick it up tomorrow, just in case because I only have about 3 more minutes. Some sentences might have a compound subject or two nouns that are the topic or actors in the sentence. So we're going to go through these, and I'm saying this because, again, sometimes people get confused and they're like, well, which one is the subject? Well, both. So dogs and cats love to run. Dogs and cats are both working as the subject. They're called a compound subject. Hot dogs and hamburgers are being cooked. They're both the subject. They're both working as a subject. Jason and Kevin have arrived for the party. Right, and those are your subject. Desks and chairs need to be cleaned. And desks and chairs is your compound subject. Chocolate and strawberry are my favorite flavors. Okay. So I deliberately made this kind of easy so you can figure it out. Now, in a sentence that we're just writing for ourselves, we tend to use adjectives to describe stuff. And so then it can be harder to see. Now, in a compound subject, the whole thing, we just kind of circle or highlight the whole thing. That whole bit is our compound subject. We're not going to separate out the adjectives or the nouns. If you wanted to, like if I wanted to make a shorter sentence, I could take out the adjectives. I couldn't take out the nouns. It wouldn't make any sense. Creepy and scary were out for Halloween doesn't make sense. Creepy monsters and scary ghosts were out for Halloween. I could have crunchy chips and creamy dip is my favorite snack, and that is my compound subject. The little black cat and the big brown dog played together. Okay, I am going to skip ahead briefly to, where are we? Okay, tomorrow we are going to start with Unit 1, Assignment 1. And that assignment starts with looking at the grandfather teachings and how they've impacted your life. If you want to, there's a little video on the grandfather teachings, and there's a little playlist of different people discussing the teachings and how they affect them or their life. I'm just going to kind of quickly go there and show it to you so you can find it again. In case you want to read it, oh, I apologize. You don't need that part. Sorry, we're working on that. As you can see down here, I'm going to pause it for a second. All the different teachings have like a little 1 minute, not 2 minute, teaching on one of the grandfather teachings. So if you wanted to take a look at that today, you can. You don't have to. It's not part of the assignment, but you do have to talk about the grandfather teachings tomorrow, and you might find it easier if you've looked at this ahead of time. So this is from the Ontario Native Women's Association. It starts with respect, humility, bravery, honesty, love, wisdom, truth, and love and leadership. And each time it's somebody different talking about what that grandfather teaching is or means and how they used it in their life, which is a little bit like the assignment we're going to do tomorrow, which is kind of wanted to see this. We will take a quick look at it tomorrow, but we won't have time to listen to every single one. Okay. All right. We are going to wrap things up. I do know I have one listener there. Is there any questions anybody wants to ask me before we go? No?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. It was so nice having somebody. And I hope we get a chance to talk tomorrow.
Okay, see you
Okay.
tomorrow.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.